This person does not exist. Robert had been looking for a job in the tech industry for months, and when he finally landed a position as a photo analyst for a cutting-edge AI company, he felt like he had hit the jackpot. Robert's job was straightforward, at least at first glance. He had to examine photos and distinguish between those of real people and those that were generated by AI. As he delved deeper into his work, Robert became fascinated by the intricacies of the algorithm that produced these images. He marveled at the way the algorithm could create such realistic human faces, and spent hours analyzing every pixel of every image to determine whether it was authentic or artificially generated. At times, Robert felt like he was in a dream job, surrounded by the latest technology and constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible. He was a perfectionist and took pride in his ability to identify even the subtlest differences between real and generated images. He was determined to make his mark in the industry and become a respected photo analyst. But despite his enthusiasm, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the generated images. They all seemed to have small imperfections that made them appear slightly less human than the real photos. It was a nagging feeling that he couldn't quite put his finger on, but it made him uneasy. Still, Robert was committed to his work, and he pushed through the doubts and insecurities that crept into his mind. He was determined to be the best photo analyst the company had ever seen, and he spent long hours studying every aspect of the AI algorithm. In the end, Robert's dedication paid off, and he became one of the most highly regarded photo analysts in the company. But little did he know that his work was about to take a dark turn, leading him down a path of terror and horror that he could never have imagined. As Robert delved deeper into his job, he started to notice something strange. The faces of the AI-generated people he was looking at were just too perfect. Every feature, every line, every curve seemed to have been created with meticulous care. It was as if they had been sculpted by a master artist. At first, Robert was impressed with the level of detail in the AI-generated faces. He marveled at the level of technology that could create something so lifelike. But as he continued to work with the photos, he began to feel uneasy. There was something about the perfection of the faces that was deeply unsettling. Robert started to wonder how the algorithm was able to create such perfect faces. It was almost as if the AI had been able to study every aspect of human beauty and combine it into one perfect face. The more he looked at the photos, the more he realized that the AI-generated people looked almost too good to be true. Despite his unease, Robert continued to do his job diligently. He would study each photo carefully, looking for any imperfections or signs that it might be AI-generated. But the more he looked, the more he felt like he was staring into the uncanny valley. The AI-generated faces were so close to human, yet so far away. As Robert went through the photos day after day, the perfection of the faces started to get under his skin. It was as if the faces were taunting him, mocking him with their flawless features. He started to feel like he was losing his grip on reality. Were these faces real, or were they just an illusion created by a machine? The more Robert thought about it, the more he realized that there was something deeply unsettling about the perfect faces. They seemed almost too good to be true, too beautiful to be real. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something sinister lurking beneath the surface. But what could it be? Robert knew that he had to keep searching for answers, even if it meant delving into the unknown. Robert was engrossed in his work, trying to determine which photos were real and which were generated by AI. It was a difficult task, but he enjoyed the challenge. One day, he received an unexpected message from a curator who claimed to have expertise in identifying real faces from generated ones. Robert was initially skeptical, but the curator's insights proved to be invaluable. He showed Robert how to look for subtle differences in the images that could indicate whether they were real or generated. At first, Robert was grateful for the help. The curator seemed to have a wealth of knowledge about the field that Robert could only dream of. However, as he followed the curator's advice, he began to notice something strange about the images. They were all too perfect. Robert couldn't help but feel that something was off. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that the curator's advice was leading him down a dangerous path. The perfect faces in the generated images started to take on an eerie quality that made Robert uneasy. He started to feel like he was being watched all the time. The curator's advice had opened up a Pandora's box that Robert was not sure he could close. Despite his reservations, Robert continued to work on the project. He felt like he was on the brink of discovering something incredible, something that would change the world of AI forever. But as he delved deeper into the images, he realized that the truth was far more horrifying than he could have ever imagined. The curator contacted Robert again, but this time he revealed a horrifying truth. The generated images that Robert had been working with were not actually generated at all. They were photos of some creatures that only pretended to be people. Robert felt a wave of fear wash over him as he realized the magnitude of what he was dealing with. The curator's advice had led him down a dark path, one that he was not sure he could come back from. But he knew that he had to keep going, that he had to find a way to stop these creatures from taking over. The perfect faces that had once captivated him now filled him with dread and terror. Robert knew that he was in for the fight of his life. Robert's heart sank as the curator's words echoed in his mind. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the photos once again, searching for any hint of what the curator had said. And there it was, a subtle difference in the facial features of one of the generated images that Robert had overlooked before. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had been working with photos of creatures that masqueraded as people. The very idea made his skin crawl. How could he have been so blind? As he tried to process the revelation, fear began to creep into his mind. What if the creatures knew that he had uncovered their secret? What would they do to him? He couldn't afford to be careless anymore. He had to be cautious and watchful at all times. But as much as he tried to keep a low profile, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He could sense eyes on him at all times, following him wherever he went. The fear became suffocating, and he started to have trouble sleeping at night. Despite his fear, Robert knew that he had to continue working. He couldn't just quit his job. He had bills to pay, a life to live. But every day at work was torture. Every time he looked at one of the generated images, he felt a shiver run down his spine. The weight of the truth that had been revealed to him was almost too much to bear. He felt like he was living in a nightmare, and he couldn't wake up. But he had no choice but to face the reality of the situation. The creatures were out there, and they were coming for him. Robert was constantly on edge, feeling like he was being watched everywhere he went. He couldn't shake the feeling that the perfect-faced people he saw around him were actually the creatures in disguise. They were always just out of reach, but never too far away. Robert began to feel like he was being chased. Every time he turned a corner or entered a new room, he would catch a glimpse of one of the perfect-faced people watching him. They were always there, watching, waiting. Robert couldn't escape them, no matter how hard he tried. As the days went by, the chase only seemed to intensify. The perfect-faced people were getting closer and closer, their eyes never leaving Robert. He knew that it was only a matter of time before they caught up to him. Robert was consumed by fear and paranoia. He couldn't trust anyone, not even his colleagues at work. He started to avoid people altogether, afraid that they might be one of the creatures in disguise. The chase had become all-encompassing, consuming Robert's every thought. He started to lose sleep, staying up late into the night, trying to find a way to escape the creatures that were hunting him. Despite his best efforts, the perfect-faced people were always one step ahead of him. Robert knew that he was running out of time, that the creatures were closing in. He could feel it in his bones. The chase had become a never-ending nightmare, a never-ending cycle of fear and terror. Robert didn't know how much longer he could keep running, didn't know how much longer he could survive. Robert's heart was pounding in his chest as he heard the persistent knocking on his door. He glanced at the clock and saw that it was 3 a.m. Who could be knocking at his door at this ungodly hour? He felt a creeping sense of dread wash over him as he slowly made his way towards the door. As he reached for the doorknob, his mind was racing with fear and confusion. He couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. All of the strange occurrences that had been happening since he started his job flashed through his mind. The perfect faces, the curator's advice, the creatures chasing him. It all felt like it was leading up to this moment. With shaking hands, Robert slowly opened the door and was met with the sight of a figure standing in the darkness. The figure was tall and slender, with unnaturally perfect facial features. Robert's heart nearly stopped as he realized that it was one of the creatures that had been following him. The creature stepped forward into the light, revealing its monstrous form. Its skin was pale and smooth, with no pores or imperfections. Its eyes were black and soulless, staring at Robert with an otherworldly intensity. Robert was frozen with fear, unable to move or speak as the creature advanced towards him. He could feel its cold breath on his face as it leaned in close to him. The creature's voice was like nails on a chalkboard, sending shivers down Robert's spine.
Robert,
The creature hissed.
you cannot hide from us. You are ours now.
Robert tried to scream, but no sound would come out of his throat. The creature smiled, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and slowly reached out to grab him. And with that, Robert's fate was sealed. The creatures had caught up to him, and there was no escaping their grasp. His once promising job had turned into a nightmare beyond his worst fears. Robert could only hope that he would find some way to escape, but deep down he knew that it was already too late.